Our Earth is the only planet that has life on it. It is the home of countless living creatures. These living creatures interact with each other and also with non-living components of the environment. The living organisms utilize resources available on this earth for their existence and growth. The natural resources, such as coal and various minerals, get depleted over a period of time. These are non-renewable in nature. Once they are consumed, they cannot be replenished. On the other hand, we have renewable resources such as water. These can be restored through natural processes and recycling. But the process of restoration is not unlimited. If the rate of consumption exceeds the rate of restoration, imbalance will be created. As a result, the system may fail. Excessive consumption could be the result of overconsumption by individuals, or it could be because of the high number of consumers. Most of the time, the number of consumers attains greater importance. Thus, population as a factor comes into play. The most important resource to exploit nature is the human resource. We consume innumerable natural resources for our food, shelter, clothing, and other necessities, including luxuries. Human population has increased since early evolution, but the growth rate has become faster during the recent past. If we examine the trend from the year of Christ and come to the present, the picture becomes clear. Now we are about 5.3 billion on this earth, and we are expected to be more than 6.5 billion by the year 2000 and about 8.5 billion by the year 2010. Between the year of the birth of Christ and the 17th century, the human population took about 1600 years to double. The next doubling occurred only in 200 years, and the next within 80 years. The recent doubling from 2 to 4 billion, which was completed in 1975, required only 45 years. Future doubling is going to require only 35 years. This trend is leading to overcrowding. The same space which was earlier occupied by fewer people is now being shared by many more. Population and development are invariably related. As the population increases, the resources available per individual decreases because with development, non-renewable resources get reduced fast. Here we have an aquarium. It has water, green plants, oxygen dissolved in water, and also food for fishes in the aquarium. There are few fishes in the aquarium. They are living comfortably, utilizing the resources available. Now the number of fish in the aquarium is increased. The fishes have less space to move, and they have greater competition for food. With every increase, these constraints grow, till the aquarium is overcrowded. Now fishes are not able to get sufficient oxygen and food. Some of them get sick. They may even die. After all, the oxygen and food supply are limited, and this is not matched with the growth in population. There will be casualties. The same is happening on our Earth. With every increase in human population, the pressure on resources grows. This overcrowding is obviously going to affect the ecosystem. Let us look at this small plot of land as well. There are a few plants growing. They are all healthy. Obviously, they are getting nourishment, water and sunlight as per their requirement. Now, the same plot has many more plants. The plants are surviving, no doubt, but they are not so healthy anymore. What happens if the same plot has even more plants? Some of the plants begin to die. The plot of land can hold only a limited number of plants because it has to share its supply of nutrients amongst all. We are growing in numbers everywhere, and the cost is sickness, malnutrition, overcrowding, increasing competition for everything. At this juncture, one may ask a question. So far, we have been able to meet the demands of the growing population. Why is it so that we cannot meet it anymore? If we look at the growth of human population on this earth, we find that the first major increase came about 8,000 years ago with the development of agriculture. The second and much more rapid increase started about 200 years ago with the Industrial Revolution. Almost 80% of the population increase on this earth has occurred only in the last 2 centuries. To meet the demand of food, shelter, housing, clothing, transport, communication, and so many other necessities of this fast multiplying population, we have harvested natural resources very fast. This has been possible only because we made improvements in our technologies. But these developments have their own disadvantages and limitations. For increasing agricultural land area, we have destroyed forests. In India itself, at the beginning of the present century, about 40% of the area was under forest cover. Now it is only about 15%. Forest clearances have resulted in erosion of soil, loss of nutrients from arable areas, siltation of riverbeds, eutrophication and floods. These are the immediate consequences. Rain patterns, climate, ratio of various gases in the atmosphere are also being adversely affected. It is no more possible to convert forest land to agricultural land without disturbing the ecological balance of our planet. On the contrary, some of our agricultural land will have to be sacrificed for regenerating forests. Otherwise, the adverse impacts on the ecological balance may lead to irreparable damage. This brings us to a paradox. We need more food. On the other hand, we need to divert lands from agriculture to forests. One possible way is to raise productivity per unit area. But we cannot continue this strategy any longer because we cannot increase productivity beyond a certain limit. It has a saturation point. Already it is being experienced that the type of increase in productivity which could be attained with small doses of fertilizers and pesticides earlier, is not possible now, even with larger doses. We are fast approaching the saturation stage. When we use fertilizers on land and crops, a substantial portion of it remains unused. A large number of the pesticides used today are such that they do not decompose easily. Result is that they accumulate in the soil and crop plants. From crop plants they enter the food chain and thus reach the human body and build up high concentrations. DDT and BHC are some of the pesticides commonly used in our country and other poor nations. Earlier, they were used all over the world. Their build-up in the environment has not only affected useful insects, birds, animals, but also human beings. Concentration of DDT in human fat up to 26 ppm has been reported from Delhi. Even mother's milk is contaminated. DDT up to 40 ppm have been recorded in mother's milk. Excess fertilizers and pesticides accumulating in soil are washed with rainwater or irrigation. They percolate underground and contaminate groundwater. If they are also carried to surface water bodies like rivers, ponds and lakes, they cause eutrophication. The presence of fertilizers in these water bodies leads to excessive weed growth. This makes their water no longer fit for drinking, irrigation, and fish culture. Thus, any increase in the use of fertilizers and pesticides will further spread such problems. On the other hand, the demand for these has increased and we are forced to produce more. This can be possible only if we have more manufacturing units. And more manufacturing units means greater stress on environment. It is not possible to go on exploiting nature for such developments endlessly. We have to draw a line somewhere. When the aim is to raise agricultural production alone, most of the time scientific management of agriculture and land gets a backseat. Excessive irrigation is applied with the notion that more water will produce more. Excessive fertilizers and pesticides are applied to provide better nourishment and protection to crops. But these are now established as unscientific practices which lead to deterioration of land. Arable areas turn into wasteland and deserts. With excessive exploitation of land resources, these areas turned into deserts and their civilizations vanished. The Indus Valley civilization and the civilization which flourished in Mesopotamia and the Valley of Kings are some such examples. Each year, an additional 21 million hectares of agricultural land deteriorates through desertification. In India itself, more than 50% of the total land mass which roughly comes to about 175 million hectares, has turned into wasteland. It is the result of overexploitation of land resources combined with forest destruction. We are losing more than 47,000 hectares of forest every year. The annual loss of topsoil is estimated to be about 6 billion tons every year. A third of our country is drought-prone. About 40 million hectares of land area is susceptible to floods. If we continue to exploit and destroy our land and forest resources as we have done in the past, very soon we will not have enough land area left to support healthy agriculture. Already we are facing problems in meeting the food requirements of our population. Further loss of arable land will make the situation worse. With growth in population, urbanization, new developments in agriculture and industry, our water requirements are also increasing fast. This is not matched with our groundwater resources. With every passing season, we have to dig deeper to get water. And the irony is that by destroying forests, we have come in nature's way of replenishing its groundwater resources. In the absence of adequate forest cover, most of the rainwater is being wasted through surface flow. Rainfall is becoming erratic. Due to soil erosion and siltation, we are losing reservoirs fast. Rivers become flooded when there are rains, and during lean periods they become dry because of lack of recharge from groundwater and due to fast siltation. Today, just to meet the drinking water requirements of our cities, we have to transport water from hundreds of kilometers. We also need more space for shelter, housing, clothes, health facilities, roads, trains, motor vehicles, communication facilities, and energy to drive everything. Take this for example. In the next 20 years, we need to build as many schools as were built during the entire history of this country. We have seen why we cannot keep on increasing our production in an unlimited way. There is always some cost attached to it. It is not the cost in terms of money, but in terms of increasing environmental degradation that should make us sit up. All these use natural resources on the one hand, and on the other hand they create environmental imbalances. To make one thermal power plant work, we burn coal, and to get coal we have to do more mining. This results in larger and deeper scars on the earth. These wastes spoil our land and water. The stacks emit sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and oxides of nitrogen and other gases. There is no better check on pollution than to keep a number of such plants at the minimum. Since all production and manufacturing processes affect environment, We must match our needs to our resources. If we continue to increase our developments, a stage will come when our environment will be degraded beyond repair and we will be left with no natural resources. Most of the developed nations have already achieved zero or a very low rate of growth. The poorer nations are still having a high growth rate. India is in this second group. This increase is due to the lack of social security and education amongst people of developing nations. Prevalence of social exploitation, poverty, and a colonial past have contributed to the problem. The vicious cycle of poverty and overpopulation keeps on repeating itself. Global efforts must be undertaken by developed countries to help the underdeveloped world achieve a balanced utilization of its development potential. If this does not happen, the widening gap between the rich and poor nations will only further aggravate the population problem. Consequences are already visible. As overcrowding leads to shortage of resources and facilities, there is increased psychological pressure. People in crowded areas are more susceptible to health hazards. If we want to strive for a better life and a healthy environment, we have to match our growing population with resources available on this one earth. Let us recollect, there are two kinds of resources available on earth: non-renewable resources and renewable resources. These are under pressure from our growing population. The growth in population has also contributed to destruction of forests, spread of the agrochemical threat, desertification, water crisis, and increased production, which in turn has caused environmental degradation. To save our earth, we have to match our population with the resources available The best way for this is through a zero growth rate.